Catholic Spain has always been the confessional state, and there have always been problems with that. While the church was recognized as a juridical institution, or was recognized by the monarchs, by the rulers, while the Catholic religion was the religion of the state, there were a lot of problems with that arrangement. The rulers, the monarchs, the emperors of Spain were tyrants. They were absolute rulers. They did what they wanted to do, and there were many battles between the church and the rulers. And in the end, the church didn't really have a lot of good fortune, a lot of success in changing the actions of the rulers who ended up destroying the country and who ended up causing a lot of harm around the world with their conquests and with their enslavement of many people. Now, some people say, well, but with the Spanish and the Portuguese, it was the good kind of slavery. Yeah, right. Um, what the Spanish did is basically uh, destroy and enslave peoples. But I'm not going to dwell on that. That history is pretty well established. What I want to do is talk about more recent Spanish history because several events have all come together. It's been a confluence, if you will. One, as you know, I'm working on a book on American. I just read McKinley's speech calling for the declaration of war against Spain. It's a powerful speech. It was from April 11th of 1898. The second thing is a friend of mine, a follower of mine, I guess is a better way to say it, notified me that one of my videos ended up on some blog or some website, and I was attacked for it. And so I looked at that blog or website, and it's very curious. I'll talk a little bit about that. Then the third thing is that came to light from El Pais magazine of a meeting of the Spanish bishops with the Pope on November 17th, in which the Pope is explicitly expressed concern that the extreme right is co opting religion for their own tyrannical ideological purposes. And the extreme right, that's fascism, it's tyranny, okay? You can have tyranny on the left, tyranny on the right. What I've always said is, and what I'm saying more now, is that you either have tyranny or you have liberty. And America stands for liberty, and the church has thrown in its lot with liberty. Catholic religion has thrown in its lot with liberty. And so America and the church are and have been fellow travelers for a very long time. So let's get to it. So this blog site or website, whatever you want to call it, has got apparently three moderators who are anonymous. That's that's that tells you a lot right there. They did not like my show. Three Catholic cardinals uphold the moral order, and of course they called me names and ridiculed it. But they can't attack what I'm saying. They can't attack the basic principles that I am enunciating, that I'm describing. So it's just what this website is. It's a way to amplify certain voices and to attack other voices, and it targets a certain demographic in doing that. And so, some of the voices that they like to push out are those that legitimate or approve the hatred of Jews. They're anti-Vatican II, anti-American, hate Muslims, anti-LGBTQ. They promote these narratives that Western civilization it's collapsing, it's over with, it's done. We're losing civilization. Oh, and also too, they promote nationalism, the kind of nationalism that the church has always condemned, that the Pope is again condemning, the kind of nationalism that leads to the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the quest for empire. And that, again, is something that this blog site or website does not even talk about. They don't talk about Russia or the atrocities that are going on there because these guys have an agenda and they're not Catholic. And if they support all these things I've mentioned, anti-Jew, pro-nationalism, if they support these things, then they are not Catholic. But of course, they try to claim they are, and they have some trappings of Spanish Catholicism. And this goes to a greater issue, which is that the neotrads are not Catholics because they hold, most of them hold to nationalism. That's just not Catholic. Um, so this website, this blog site, has this motto called "Ante Dios nunca serás héroe anonimo," which means before God you will never be an anonymous hero. Okay, before God, you'll never be an anonymous hero. Now, that motto is associated. I looked that up, and that is what is on the image on the front of this YouTube video. So I looked that up. The motto is associated with Carlism and is rooted in traditional Catholicism. It was used by the pro-Nazi forces during World War II, the Spanish who went and fought on the Eastern Front, and it's also used by a group known as the Carlists. Well, in history, as I understand it, after 1833, the Carlists came to prominence in Spain. They wanted a certain ruler to be the ruler, a certain person to accede to the throne, and so they made a lot of trouble for about 45 years. And there were numerous wars that they waged just to have one guy of a certain lineage sit on the throne. I mean, think about that. This was a lot of the history of Europe for centuries. For centuries. These people fought and killed each other over who's going to sit on the throne. Well, we don't do that here. America said we're going to do it with reason and logic and argument. But in Europe, life is cheap. So for centuries, all these countries that claimed to be Catholic just slaughtered each other over who was going to be the next king or queen or prince or whatever. Okay, so the Carlists really pick up. The story gets interesting with the Carlists because in 1868, Isabella II was the queen and she was removed. And everybody was apparently happy with that. And a new constitution came in that allowed for religious liberty. Then, 1872 to 1875, the Carlists weren't happy and they waged another war. So, 1876, there was a resolution brokered to that war, and as I understand, Alfonso XII, a new ruler, took the throne. I think it was Alfonso XII, took the throne in 1876, and there was a constitution that reestablished the Catholic Confessional State. Okay, now this is important. 1876 Constitution reestablishes the Catholic Confessional State. All right. By the 1890s, by the 1890s, the Cuban people were in revolt against the Spanish because they were being crushed. They were just being treated very badly. And I might note that, when Spain took over these countries in Latin and South America that were run by, Aztecs, Incas, Mayas, and so on, what the Spanish did is they concentrated wealth and power. And the people were basically enslaved. Well, and this is, Catholic Spain, okay, right? And so this is, of course, against Catholic teaching. It's against the Catholic dignity of the person. And so this horrendous treatment of the Cuban people was carried on by Catholic Spain under their new ruler. I think it was Alfonso XIII at that time. And under his constitution that established the Catholic religion, the Catholic Confessional State. So I want to read from President McKinley's speech asking for a declaration of war on the 11th of April, 1898. It's a brilliant speech because what you see in the speech is the American dedication to the natural law, the American dedication to the law of nations or the natural law, and this is what always infused American conduct over the centuries. This is what characterized us. This did not characterize Spain, and in fact, the School of Salamanca pushed back against the Spanish rulers on what they were doing in Latin and South America during the 1500s. They condemned that. The Spanish priests condemned that, but that didn't stop the rulers. They kept doing what they're doing because what they did is they protected the church. They let a few dissident voices. They protected the church, and the church basically supported them no matter what they did. I mean, they were criticized. The tyrants of Spain were criticized by the church. But at the end of the day, the church went along with the tyrants because, that's their bread and butter. I mean, So President McKinley talks about the need for the people to have basically self determination, that the Spanish were destroying the productivity of Cuba. And you have to understand this about America. America has always acted in a way to cooperate with God in creation. Always done that. Um, and then he also talked about, and Spain was not doing that with Cuba. Cuba was not was not working with God, even though it's a Catholic area, was not working with God for creation. The Cuba, and then also too, McKinley talked about how Cuba affected the USA, which means these disorders in Cuba and in Spain were affecting the international community. And so McKinley did the right thing under the natural law, under the law of nations. He said, we have to do something about this. But here is something I want to read to you, which comes from the president, President McKinley. And he talks about how horrible things were in Cuba, which is another reason to basically protect those people. And actually, the Spanish going in to protect the Mayans and the Aztec people from human sacrifice was something that was approved by the Catholic priests at the time. Though the Spanish kings and rulers didn't really care; they were very nationalist, so they didn't really care what the priest said. But this idea that McKinley put forth of protecting the people in Cuba against their own rulers, it's a very old and good idea, and the United States acted on that. Okay, so this is what the president says. By the time the present administration took office a year ago, that's President McKinley, reconcentration, so called, had been made effective over the better part of the four central and western provinces of Cuba: Santa Clara, Matanzas, Havana, and Pinar del Rio. Reconcentration, concentration camps. Okay? Catholic Spain created concentration camps. We're going to see this idea again later. The agricultural population, to the estimated number of 300,000 or more, was herded within the towns and their immediate vicinage, deprived of the means of support, rendered destitute of shelter, left poorly clad, and exposed to the most unsanitary conditions. As the scarcity of food increased with the devastation of the depopulated areas of production, destitution and want became misery and starvation. Month by month, the death rate increased in an alarming rate. By March 1897, according to conservative estimates from official Spanish sources, the mortality among the reconcentrados from starvation and the diseases thereto incident exceeded 50% of their total number. 50%. Catholic Spain's doing this. Everybody's a Catholic. Catholic, Catholic, Catholic. 50% of the total number. No practical relief was accorded to the destitute. The overburdened towns, already suffering from the general dearth, could give no aid. So-called zones of cultivation established within the immediate areas of effective military control about the cities and fortified camps proved illusory as a remedy for the suffering, the unfortunates being for the most part women and children, with aged and helpless men, enfeebled by disease and hunger, could not have tilled the soil without tools, seat, or shelter for their own support or for the supply of the cities. Reconcentration, adopted avowedly as a war measure in order to cut off the resources of the insurgents, worked its predestined result. As I said in my message of last December, it was not civilized warfare, it was extermination by Catholic Spain, Catholic Confessional State Spain. Extermination of people. Is that in accordance with God's law? The only peace it could beget was that of the wilderness and the grave. Meanwhile, the military situation on the island had undergone a noticeable change. The extraordinary activity that characterized the second year of the war when the insurgents invaded even the hitherto unharmed fields of Pinar del Rio and carried havoc and destruction up to the walls of the city of Havana itself, had relapsed into a dogged struggle in the central and eastern provinces. The Spanish arms regained a measure of control, but under the existing conditions without immediate improvement of the productive situation. So there was a terrible war going on. People were being exterminated by the Spanish. And America, true to natural law, true to what God wants, stepped in. Stop it. So let's go on now. Let's fast forward about, I don't know, what, 50 years, 45 years, and we get to Francisco Franco. Okay? A lot of neo-trads just love Franco. You know, they think he's great. He's just the perfect. Well, Franco was a tyrant. Okay, he was a brutal tyrant. Yes, he protected the Catholic Church. That's correct, he did. But the Catholic Church also protected him. Okay, and so that's how it worked. He said, "Look, I'll look out for you guys. You look out for me," and that's how it worked. That's how the Catholic Confessional State worked, and it resulted in a lot of horrific things happening. There's an abstract that I'm going to read you from an article by Laura Munoz Enseñar from Heritage, Memory, and Conflict, 10 May 2023. Um, and an abstract from an article called Report on Franco Spain, Beyond Mass Graves, Exhuming Francoist Concentration Camps. Again, concentration camps from the Spanish Catholics. As several historical investigations have revealed, I'm reading from the abstract, between 130,000 and 150,000 Republicans were executed. Executed during the Spanish Civil War, which was 1936 1939, and Franco's dictatorship, which was 1939 1977. The Francoist repressive strategy unleashed after the coup d'etat of 17 July 1936 developed complex mechanisms of physical and psychological punishment. The continuing subjugation of those still living was enacted through concentration camps, prisons, and forced labor. During the war and Franco's dictatorship, there were nearly 300 concentration camps, and between 367,000 and 500,000 prisoners went through those camps. During the transition to democracy, neither the state nor the judiciary investigated mass crimes connected to the repression and execution of left-wing Republicans. After Franco's death, some family groups recovered some of these bodies buried on unmarked mass graves without scientific involvement. In the year 2000, the first scientific exhumations took place, and since then more than 400 mass graves have been opened and up to 9,000 bodies have been recovered. Then she goes on to say the memory of the victims of Franco's violence has been mainly centralized on mass graves, um, and the opening of mass graves has positioned the Spanish Civil War case within the international sphere of human rights violations and also opened a new window of opportunity for the analysis of Francoist concentration camps. So she then goes into a study of the repressive system of the camps, how they worked, including physical violence, and also how they pulled people into the camps. So again, Catholic Spain, Francisco Franco, fascist. The neo-trads love this guy. I see it all over the place. Neo-trads, traditional Catholics love him. They love nationalism. All this stuff is condemned by the Catholic Church. None of this stuff is Catholic, but they claim to be Catholic. The neo-trads and traditionalists claim to be Catholic. And of course, what they're talking about, bringing anybody who talks about bringing back the Catholic Confessional State, and I admit, I got to own it. I mean, I talked about it once too, but I was wrong. Anybody who talks about bringing back the Catholic Confessional State is talking about supporting tyranny, because it's not going to come back in a vacuum. People are not going to just simply, the rulers are simply, and people are simply not going to listen to the Catholic Church once it gets established uh, in law or as the official religion. They're not going to follow it. That's what Catholic Spain is an example of. It is an example of the failure of the Catholic Confessional State. It didn't work. It doesn't work. Pope Francis knew that. He said that in May of 2016. And with time, wise people come to understand that's the truth. So this brings me to my next point, which is Pope Leo XIV talking to Spanish bishops on November 17th. This comes from Christopher Hale, who has a Substack called Letters from Leo. It's actually very good. He does his homework. But this story that he's writing about has been reported by El Pais and a lot of other sources, so you can find it if you look for it online. And from El Pais, quote, Pope Leo XIV told Spain's bishops that the greatest threat to the nation was not secularism, but the far right, end of quote. That's nationalism. That's traditional Catholics who support that. It's the neo-trads. This is what they want. They want nationalism. And that nationalism leads to the human rights violations, as we saw in Franco Spain, and as we saw in the conquest of Latin America and South America. Um, El Pais tweeted, the Pope has stated that his greatest concern at this moment in Spain is the far right ideology. During a meeting with the Spanish bishops, the pontiff warned that they were seeking to win the Catholic vote and to instrumentalize the church. That means to use the church to support the tyrant, which I've been talking to you about with the Catholic Confessional State under the kings and emperors, and during the time of the Spanish colonization of the New World, and during the time of the Carlists in Spain, and during the time of Franco. All these rulers were tyrants, and they instrumentalized the church. They used the church. They brought it on board. They made it official. Made the religion official. Boom! You got instant credibility. Boom! But in return, what you churchmen with the turned around collars got to do, you got to support us. I support the government. The government is tyrannical, and the government does not care about the person, does not care about peace, does not care about community of nations, does not care about the rule of law. All these things America does care about, all these things the church has said is good and are good. The tyrants don't care about any of that stuff. What they do is they play to nationalism to keep conflict alive, both within their society and with other societies. That's what they do. And that's how they keep power. And we see that with Russia. We see that many places. And now we're starting to see it in this country. And one group that is, in my view, nationalists and fascists is the Notre Dame Republicans. Their response to that El Pais tweet that I just told you, and that tweet was the Pope stated the greatest concern at this moment in Spain is the far right ideology. And during a meeting with the Spanish bishops, the pontiff warned they are seeking to win the Catholic vote and to instrumentalize the church. That's what El Pais says. That's what the Pope said. The Notre Dame GOP response, which is the fascist response, says these are simply indefensible comments. At a certain point, we need to be honest about the deeply problematic drift of the modern church. There you have in a microcosm with the Notre Dame Republicans, my alma mater. Notre Dame Republicans have become fascist. They are setting forth, they're announcing a nationalist view, which is not Catholic. And it goes in with the Latin Mass. It goes in with these guys running around, saying it's all about communism. It's all about communism. And what they do is they give you a false choice. It's either communism or fascism, and they're fascists. There was a communist threat at one time. There is no doubt. There was a communist during the Cold War, a very serious communist threat. Okay, but it came mostly from Russia, and right now it's a Russian threat. It's a Russian nationalist threat, which they're encouraging in this country, which the Notre Dame Republican Party has fallen for, because a large part of the Republican Party in this country is considered to be Putin's party for a number of reasons, which we will get into at a later time. But what you see now is you see the Russians are very nationalist, and they have penetrated America. They've penetrated the Republican Party. They've penetrated the Catholic Church, and they are advancing these ideologies that are condemned here by the Pope, these ideologies of nationalism. They are promoting these ideologies. They are advancing and championing these ideologies to rip apart societies and to reorder the world in order to do away with human rights, the centrality of the person. Peace is the natural state of man, the community of nations, and the rule of law. And they're using nationalism and, stories of sexual perversion and abortion and all that stuff to get people on their side to destroy this very beneficial world order that says that we're a community of nations that the person is the object of all of our efforts, that peace is the natural goal of what we do, and that the rule of law is how we need to govern our relationships. So that's all I got for today. It's a lot. Thanks.